best is yet to come, and babe, won't it be fine?
You think you've seen the sun, but you ain't seen it shine.
Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Ask the Treksperts, the show where we answer your questions about Star Trek. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Sarah.
Today's question comes from Lego Geek 4671, who asks, would Q have worked well for Enterprise? And why didn't they use him? That's what we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to open us up. I wrote a script for a radio show back in high school where Q shows up in Enterprise. And I was doing a Star Trek club back in high school, my senior year, and we actually performed this radio play. It wasn't very good, but I still kind of like my initial idea for it, and that is Q shows up in Enterprise to try to fix the timeline a little bit, or at the very least to explore why time got messed up. Because I was, from the beginning of Enterprise, irritated about the whole continuity problem, and about how it seemed like, you know, even though the show was being considered canon, they were blatantly messing with stuff, and we've talked about this before, where the very initial premise of Enterprise is there's a temporal Cold War, and time is kind of messed up, and yet it acts like it's supposed to be canon with the rest of Star Trek, and at no point in the series does it come out and say that this is a separate timeline or anything like that. So Q basically shows up to tell Archer that Archer was never supposed to have been born, and because Archer got born, the timeline gets messed up. And I always thought that was kind of a fun idea. I'm not saying they should have done it the way I'm suggesting, but I think Q could have really helped bridge the gap between the continuity problems of Enterprise and the rest of Star Trek, and that's how I think he should have been used.
Yeah, you know, in a way, I see where you're coming from, and I think that would have been a lot cooler than the way they did in the Temporal Cold War, because for me, the conclusion of that was extremely unsatisfying, because it wrapped it up, but like nothing changed and everybody still remembered it, and I don't know. It was just weird.
Well, the problem with it was, you're talking at the beginning of season 4, with the cliffhanger from Zero Hour.
Yeah.
And what they did is they basically ended the Temporal Cold War by stopping the thing that started it in the first place, and yet everyone remembers it.
Yeah.
Makes no sense.
So in a sense, you know, that would have been a good plot device to say, okay, this is the way that it all gets wrapped up. Q comes in, saves the day, he can snap his fingers, everything goes back to normal. Now continuity can progress, and then eventually we figure that it'll eventually look like the original series that we know and love.
Yeah.
But
the problem with that, of course, is that basically you get 3 seasons that never happen and are completely pointless.
Yeah.
Because then your last season, or if the series continued, the rest of your series, you got all these characters that did all this stuff that they no longer remember.
Although
because
the
that's the
great
only way
thing about that
make
is
any
that
sense.
for most of the characters, seasons 1 through 3 gave no character development.
Yeah, no,
so
absolutely.
it wouldn't be really starting from scratch. So,
yeah,
but I'm just. Yeah.
But with the events and everything, it would be completely pointless.
Yeah.
I don't think you could ever get away with completely retconning 3 seasons of a 4-season show.
I don't know. It'd be really gutsy.
I don't think that's the right word for it.
I don't know.
I think cop-out is would be the more correct term, which is sort of in a way kind of what happened anyway, right, with season 4.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, when you get into Manikoto creating something that was a whole lot more like actual Star Trek.
But I think it'd be better than just plain retcon. And I'm not saying that that's what they did at all by any means, but I'm just saying that some people would call it cop-out.
That's
but
very One More Day to me. The thing is,
but
my whole idea about
planning from the beginning.
I don't remember how exactly I did it.
Yeah.
When I wrote that silly script, but the way I did it, like Q comes back and he talks with Archer and he does some stuff, but the timeline still remains the same for whatever reason. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't just a cop out to fix the Temporal Cold War. It was simply to let the fans know that this was a different timeline. And I think Q is a really cool way to do that.
Yeah, and
do you think Q should have been used at all, or are you kind of?
I don't think so.
Really?
I really don't think so. I think the problem is.
I love this. We finally have a topic where we are completely polar on it, because I think 100% he should have been.
Okay. In Fantasyland, where everything would have gone perfectly and there would have been no problems at all with Q becoming an Enterprise, as a fan of Q, I would have loved to have seen him in the show. Do I think they could have pulled it off? No. Okay. Couple problems. One, by that point, John Delancey was looking older than he did at any other point in the show.
It's not that big of a
It's
deal
not
when
that
you
big a
look
deal?
at Voyager versus TNG.
Yeah, but that was a continuation of Voyager where he was already starting to look older. And Q is supposed to be timeless. And he was already saying he was getting too old to play the part.
Okay, here's what's really interesting. I'm sorry, don't forget your other point, but I think that this is the place where we need to talk about this part. I never thought it should have been... This is really interesting. It never even occurred to me that they would do it the way you're talking about. I always assumed that if you use Q in Enterprise, it would have been TNG Q. It would have been Q coming from the future into the past, not like our Q. From the future, going backwards, remembering everything, and then it doesn't matter how much John Delancey's aged. You see that's how you do it. It wouldn't be like 22nd century Q. And I know you say Q's timeless and all that, but he's really not. Not if you. He's really not. There is definitely a progression with that character.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's actually not timeless at all, even though he kind of acts like he is, because you know he
certainly doesn't age like, say, Picard and Riker.
No, he doesn't age, but he doesn't live outside of time. He's not like the founder, or not the founder. He's not like the prophets in DS9. You know, where they don't understand linear time. He's not like that.
Right, but in say 200 years, he's not going to look like he's aged all that much. It's not like 200 years equals 10 years.
No, but that's why I say you come up with some kind of interesting contrivance where he looks like he did in Voyager for the sake of the audience.
No, I think he's from the 29th century or 31st century.
But he wouldn't age anyway.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like your argument, I think, is completely moot because from the first season of TNG to the end of Voyager, he shouldn't have aged at all, and he looks like he aged 20 years. So I don't see that as a problem. But I'm sorry. What was your other point?
My other problem is Voyager, because I love Death Wish, where with the other Q, Quinn, and the suicide thing.
Yeah.
But Q in the Gray and Q2 especially were not really good places to take Q, I thought.
That doesn't mean you can't use them again.
Yeah, but I think it just seemed to me like they were heading in a direction with him that I wasn't happy with.
Right.
And I don't think they were going to return him to TNG Q. I figure if they were going to do him in Enterprise, it would be a continuation of the Voyager Q.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that he was used for different reasons in different shows. And in Voyager, he was a very different character than he was in TNG because they were trying to make him work well with Janeway. And I think that if you put him in Enterprise and you gave him a series reason to have him there, it wouldn't have been like Voyager. If anything, they would have taken the creative license that they did with everything in Enterprise, and he would have been yet again a different kind of character.
Yeah. Yeah, perhaps so. And who can say if it would have been a better character or a worse one?
What's funny is that is precisely one of the big reasons I wanted to see him in Enterprise, which was I didn't like Q2 and I wanted him to go off on less of a sour note. I wanted to see him again, even if it wasn't Enterprise, just so that he could have had maybe a better episode.
Yeah, but then they'd also have to retcon the reason why he doesn't have his son with him, because he was pretty much chained at the hip, joined at the hip to him because he had to have a guardian.
I don't think so, because once again, a guardian for forever, not a guardian of forever. But once again, I don't think it would have necessarily had to have been into Voyager Q. I think it could have been a Q from a period that we knew that went back in time.
Yeah.
But not necessarily all the way that far. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, like it could have been Q circa Q Who or Q circa All Good Things.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think then you still have the problem with Q aging and it being like Riker from Pegasus being in the last episode of Enterprise.
Here's the thing. I don't think you could mess Q up in Enterprise any worse than they messed up anything else from TNG and Enterprise. Okay, that's a lot of the reason that I would have liked to have seen it, because I think the simple idea of let's use Q to bridge the gap, and I think that would be the only reason you'd use Q. I mean, because the thing about it is you can't just use Q in Enterprise for the same reason you can't just use the Borg in Enterprise. They did the Borg, but they had to come up with a reason that nobody ever found out about them before TNG. And you would have had to have done the same thing with Q, ironically for exactly the same reason.
And the problem is that I'm tired of Enterprise for doing that.
Oh yeah, me too.
I got so sick of them taking a species that we weren't supposed to know about yet, because we saw them for the very first time in Enterprise, and It's like Smallville, where everybody's conveniently unconscious.
Right.
So
But-
in Enterprise, everybody conveniently forgets or conveniently doesn't see the face, or I mean, it's
I
just,
know that. But hear me out for a second.
Yeah.
The problem is, I got sick of them constantly doing that sort of thing, and it never worked, and it was never clever. And if
Yeah.
you'd done Q, you could have done something clever with it. And my problem was never, I never thought let's never use anything from the later shows in that show.
Yeah.
I wanted to see it done in a way that actually worked and actually integrated, and I think
Yeah.
Q is one of the few things that could have been integrated. I really believe that.
Possibly, but you needed some
Now-
people to actually write
Now,
it
granted,
well and work it in well.
Everybody would have had to have kind of forgotten about him at the end, which is part of the problem with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Q could have shown up and been somewhat in the background somehow. I mean, like, okay, one of the only ones they did kind of semi-okay was the Borg. The only thing I didn't like about the Borg was the whole they talked to the crew over audio, but they never say we are Borg.
Yeah.
The only thing that didn't work with that. The rest of it I was kind of okay with, and I really liked it being a sequel to First Contact. And that Regeneration worked fairly well.
Yeah.
The only real irritating thing about that was Phlox is able to stop himself from being assimilated, and he's like the only species, the Denomulans apparently the only species ever that have that kind of immunity for like a biped race. I thought that was really very, very, very strange.
Yeah.
But anyway, more often than not, what you got were things like the Ferengi. We're going to act like it's clever because we have the Ferengi. You know what I mean? We're going to use them for no good reason whatsoever, and we're going to come up with a really contrived reason that nobody knows who they are or what their names are later on. That kind of thing. Okay.
It's not like we don't have races that are used later on
Yeah.
that we've known for forever. We saw them in TNG or TOS and have they've been member species of the Federation. Like the Andorians, they took and they used them really well.
Right.
And I just wish they could have taken more species that were completely underused, that look cool. They could have made them better and given them some backstory.
Well, they started doing that in 4, and
Yeah.
all we needed was the show to have gone longer, and for Berman and Braga not to have been the showrunners for as long as they were.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not here nor there. What I think needed to have happened was more clever uses of stuff that we saw later, because the early Enterprise stuff just isn't interesting. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, let's use Nausicaans. Okay, you don't have to freaking retcon the whole Nausicaan race and make them an entirely different kind of race than what they were.
Yeah.
Suddenly they're speaking in complete sentences and stuff. Like what? That's not what the Nausicaans were.
Yeah.
Where's Berling-Hoff Rasmussen? Why didn't we do a follow up to Berling-Hoff Rasmussen? You had who was, if you don't remember, A Matter of Time, TNG. He was from the 22nd century.
Yeah.
Somebody from the 26th century goes back in time, he steals that guy's spaceship, and he goes forward in time. We could have easily done a follow-up to Berling-Hoff Rasmussen.
Or at least had a clever mention somewhere that, only somebody who knew TNG that well would catch the name drop.
Yeah, absolutely. So we end the show, so we go 4 years, never doing any interesting crossover with TNG, or any of the later shows, really. There's some decent TOS stuff in 4. But like never doing any good stray crossover stuff with TNG, could have possibly been done. And then we end the series with that really, really bogus Riker Troy thing, which I don't even want to talk about. And never any Q. I think it could have been done.
Yeah. And I think it could have possibly maybe been done well, but the likelihood of it having been done well.
You think not with that
minuscule.
staff?
Not with that staff in a million years.
Okay, let me see if I can get you to meet me halfway. Not a Berman and Braga script, but a Manny Koto script in season 4.
Possibly.
A two-parter
Sure.
in season 4.
Sure. I think that has maybe a 50-50 shot of working out. At least.
Well, what do you think? Should Q have been an Enterprise? If so, how would it have worked out? I think you raised some really good arguments with that, and I think that I will concede to the point that how would you end it? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the really tough part. The more I think about it, is I don't know how you would end that show without everybody knowing who Q was, or without coming up with some really stupid contrived reason that they don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
you strand Archer on Archer 4 for forever, but then you never get to tell anyone.
Well, what do you think? Leave your comments, and if there's something you'd like to ask us later on in an episode of Ask the Treksperts, leave that in the comments as well. Thanks as always for watching. I'm Captain Logan.
I'm Sarah.
And we'll see you in 2 weeks.